as a nuclear energy expert, how on earth do you try and look at this information from North Korea when obviously obtaining crucial, relevant intelligence is obviously so difficult to come by?
Oh, absolutely, Katie. It's extremely difficult to attempt to get any type of intelligence out of North Korea, and that's due for several reasons. One is that the regime is quite repressive, and it's more or less a police state. So it's very difficult to be able to have your intelligence agents that are placed within the most strategic sites, particularly in the nuclear program. So typically what is done by Western countries is, one, they depend upon defectors and what defectors say that have come out of North Korea. And then also, two, you have to base a lot of your faith on satellite imagery as well, and then you extrapolate from that. So when I look at North Korea, I can see that North Korea has been making great strides in terms of technological advancement, in terms of its nuclear program, and also in terms of rocket and missile technology. So we can see that on several counts, most analysts have been surprised seeing the relative sophistication of North Korea's nuclear program.
So where we stand right now, just how capable are they in terms of launching a nuclear attack on South Korea or even the US?
Well, they're nuclear capable right now. But the main question, which has most people outside of South Korea alarmed, is South Korea's technical and technological ability to be able to fit a nuclear warhead on top of a ballistic missile and thereby send it to either Japan or send it to the US or the US homeland or US bases in the Pacific. So North Korea does not have the ability at the moment to be able to fit a nuclear warhead on a ballistic missile, although they do have crude nuclear bombs. So North Korea could, of course, bomb South Korea, and of course there could be an asymmetrical attack in terms of planting a bomb on a ship or what have you. But in terms of placing on a missile and then sending it halfway across the world, North Korea does not seem to have that ability at the moment.
When do you think they will?
Well, it's anyone's guess, and as I stated, we have been surprised on several occasions by North Korea's sophistication, whereby we thought that they were several years behind, but in fact, they were actually much more advanced than what we thought. So I can give you an example. In 2010, Siegfried Hecker of Stanford University was granted unprecedented access in order to go into Yongbyon. And while he was there, he said that he was absolutely shocked because this facility could have been in the US in terms of its technological sophistication. So, of course, it's anyone's guess how far along North Korea would be in order to place a nuclear warhead on a ballistic missile. But given the rate of advancement, I would give it about 2 years or so. And if I could just say one thing, if we use Pakistan, for instance, as a type of example, Pakistan bought a North Korea missile, the Rodong missile, in 1993. And within 10 years, it was able to fit a nuclear warhead on top of its missile. So based on that, we could say that North Korea has had a bit of a head start and perhaps sometime soon.
So how on earth did North Korea, a rogue state, I guess by any assessment, how did they get to this stage? How did they become so capable today?
Well, North Korea has had a clandestine nuclear program since the 1980s. And if we look at Yongbyon, it became operational in 1985. And then since then, there have been a series of agreements and then also disagreements between the US, North Korea, and what have you, whereby North Korea would deactivate the site and then reactivate the site. So North Korea, in 1994, there was what was known as the agreed framework between the US and North Korea, and it agreed to dismantle Yongbyon, and in exchange for US assistance in terms of power generation and fuel and what have you. That collapsed, that agreement collapsed in 2003, and since then, North Korea has been making significant efforts in terms of trying to make its nuclear program much more robust. Another thing too, in the 1990s, North Korea was part of the AQ-CON network, of course, that we know provided nuclear material to various countries that wanted to create their own nuclear weapons. So North Korea is part of this program. So we also believe that North Korea had access to Chinese origin nuclear blueprints.
And actually, China's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. Of course, it's a very interesting situation there. Obviously, they're the main financial, the main diplomatic backers when it comes to North Korea. But even they've been getting increasingly irritated with all these sweeping sanctions from North Korea. They obviously didn't disagree with the US-backed sanctions. Only today they came out and said no country should be allowed to show a region and even the whole world and plunge it into chaos for selfish gain. So you could see there are certainly some upset people there at the moment. What role do you see them playing in this?
Well, China always has a very important role in terms of international stability. If we go back to the 1990s, when there was a nuclear program, for instance, in Algeria, China played a formative role in bringing Algeria to the table in terms of moving it away from what was suspected to be a nuclear program with weaponization as its focus. So China plays a very critical role. We can see that China, even though it is more or less the sole backer of North Korea, it has become increasingly irritated with his rhetoric that has been coming out of North Korea, because China does not benefit whatsoever from any type of instability in the Korean Peninsula whatsoever. China would not be a beneficiary of that. So we can see that China increasingly, whereas it won't cut off North Korea completely, because not only China but also the West wants to have an avenue to influence North Korea's behavior. But on the other hand, we can see that China is not going to be the complete enabler that many people perceived it as being of North Korea in the past. So we see its role moderating. And China, for instance, for the sanctions that were promulgated after the third nuclear test, did not obstruct U.S. efforts in order to tighten the noose around North Korea. So we think that's a positive development.
Just very, very quickly, we're basically out of time. Do you see things changing with China? Do you think they will be able to influence North Korea to calm down?
I think so, but I think that we need to get over this initial phase at first, because Kim Jong-un is trying to consolidate power. So I think after that phase, then I think that China will be able to resume influence.